Any others?
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Ginger Bluntmore. I serve as the Assistant City Manager for the City of Newport News. I'm here for Alan Archer. Just want to also offer condolences to Alan. He lost his father recently.
Any other?
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
Nathaniel Rock. I'm filling in for Mascalia for water.
Thanks, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. Trista Pope, Deputy City Manager, City of Norfolk, filling in for Patrick Roberts, City Manager. Thank you.
Any other?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Captain Shane Tanner. I'm the new Chief of Staff for Navy Region Mid-Atlantic, and I'm looking forward to working with you. Thank you.
Sir. All right. Move on to item number two. Item number two, need a motion and a second for approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Agenda. I'm sorry. All right. First, we have a second.
Second.
Second. And if you'll say your name when you first and second, that was have it for the record.
Al Kaplan, Franklin, second.
Bobby Dyer, primary.
Thank you, sir. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ayes carried. All right. Number three.
Moving into our public comment.
Mr. Chairman, we received no public comments in advance of today's board meeting. I would ask if anyone from the audience would like to address the HRTPO board today. Seeing none, sir, back to you.
Thank you, sir. All right, item number four, moving into executive director's report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My monthly report is enclosed for the board members' review. I'd be happy to respond to any questions or comments related to the items I highlighted in this month's director's report. Mr. Chairman, I would ask for the opportunity, however, to recognize a couple of people. We're going to continue to go through some transition and change over the next year in terms of leadership here in the Hampton Roads region. And there's just a couple of people I wanted to give a shout out to and recognize today. I believe that Mr. Michael King is with us here today in the audience. I think Mike is someone that everyone around this table knows and is familiar with. For those that don't know Mike King, he is the current Regional Community Plans and Liaison Officer for the U.S. Navy Region Mid-Atlantic. But Mike, frankly, has been involved with this board in the HRPDC. I think it's 30 years now, Michael, going back to 1995 in the old building. So he has provided service to York County. He has provided and worked on behalf of Newport News for the past decade. He has worked for our Navy. There was a time where he was the chair of our Transportation Technical Advisory Committee. Twice. So Mike will be retiring effective tomorrow. This will be his last TPO board meeting. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Mike for his service to our region and to our communities. Thank you, Mike. So it doesn't stop there. We'll do this in a more expanded way in July. But I think many of you are aware, and I see them smiling at each other. There's two CAOs at the table that are quite happy these days. But Randy Keaton and Al Moore will both be retiring this summer and moving on to their next chapter. Mr. Chairman, we're going to have recognize their contributions to the region at a meeting this summer. Stay tuned for that. But I did want to give everybody a heads up as life gets very busy. If you get a chance to say hello to them today, hopefully your paths continue to cross. We're going to have a couple of little get-togethers to honor the great things they've done, not only for their localities, but for the Hampton Roads region. So Randy and Al, you're going to be missed, but we're not done working together yet. So we'll see you here in the coming months, and we'll be recognizing them more formally at that point.
Great.
Okay,
Cool.
Mr. Chairman, from there, we can go on to the consent agenda. Your consent agenda is included, items A through F, and I would recommend that the board take action to approve today's consent agenda as distributed in your agenda package.
Thank you, sir. All right,
Mr. Chair, I would move for approval. William Harrell.
thank you, sir. Second. Thank you very much. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Any abstentions? Ayes will carry. Thank you very much. All right, next, we're moving into item number 6, the Norfolk International Airport update.
Yes, so we're going to have Mark Perriman from Norfolk International Airport come on up to the podium. Really excited about today's briefing. As you all know, there's a lot of great, exciting things happening at the Norfolk Airport. Mark, appreciate you being here today to share the great progress with our board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, everyone here today, mayors and administrators and city managers and everyone else. I appreciate the opportunity, and I always like to come to these meetings every month or so as they are set because I learn so much from them. Hopefully, you'll learn a little bit more about the airport and what we're doing. I know there's a lot of media and a lot of buzz about it, but I thought when Bob asked me to do this, I thought this was a great chance to show our entire region what the region's airport is doing for you and how we are promoting the airport, air service, and everything else. So I always like to start with just a little bit of who we are. We are an independent subdivision of the Commonwealth as the authority. That happened a few decades ago. We are governed by a 9-member board of commissioners that is appointed by the City Council of Norfolk. And the airport actually owns and operates the land and the entirety of the airport that it sits on. So I like to say we're a city within the cities, the 17 communities that we represent and serve. So we are really a city within all of those communities around us. There's little dated here. It says 225. With our new budget that gets approved next week, we'll push over to 250 personnel. We have our own police force, fire department, building maintenance, grounds workers, everything else. So we really are contained and have all of those types of functions and jobs at the airport. This is just the authority staff. There is another 2,000 or more staff that work at the airport day in and day out, that work for the airlines, concessionaires, rental cars, and all of that. So we really do have we're a large employment base at the airport as well. But we really act more like a business than a municipality or a county or anything like that, because we earn revenue, we incur costs, we don't receive any local taxes or subsidies to support us. We really are a self-contained entity, and we are really profit-driven. Because the monies that we earn as profits, we don't have shareholders, it goes back into the airport so that we have better facilities, better functions, and everything else that we can serve our traveling public with. So how do we earn our operating revenue? In 2024, this is the breakdown. Most of it comes from parking. So about 38% of our revenue comes from our parking facilities. The rest is leases, and the airlines actually pay only 15% of our costs. A lot of people are surprised by that. You would think the airlines are paying for everything, right? No, they actually pay for very, very little. And so we have to find ways to pay for the staff and the O&M and everything else that again, this is all kind of familiar to you as mayors and city administrators and county administrators. You know how that all functions. So we're always looking to figure out how do we cover our budget. Our operating budget's about $75 million a year, so it's small relatively, but our capital budget is much larger. We're about $400 million right now in the plans and under capital budget right now. This is literally brand new. Mayor, sorry, I didn't have this ready for your state of the city. The ODU didn't have the study finished, but we were $2.2 billion in economic activity and impact to the region in 2024. Or 2023, that has risen to almost 2.7 billion over the last year. Just the increase in activity that we have had with the passengers and also our capital program, now nearly 380 million under contract now. And so we are, again, employing a lot of not just day-to-day workers, but also construction contracts that are underway right now. Talk a little bit about commercial aviation and what that means. You've heard me say in my monthly reports, we're breaking another record. We're breaking another record. I think I became a broken record having said that so many times. This year's a little slower start. We're feeling, the effects of the change of administration, the tariffs, and the little bit of a slowdown, but we're back up on our trend line. And so we're only down about 1.7% for the year to date. We'll get back over the last year here really quickly with that. But last year and the year before and the year before and yet the year before were all record years. And I think we will continue to see that trend. We won't see the rate of growth that we had in the past few years, but we'll still continue to see growth coming from the airport. Something that we do is we are a participant in a program called Skytrax. This is an international rating agency that rates airports around the world. We're very pleased to say that Norfolk was just awarded a 4-star rating out of 5 for the 3rd year in a row. And the little chart, I know it's an eye chart there, it's hard to read, but you can see where I've circled Norfolk. We are on the top 10 world's best domestic airports. We're number 4 on this list. And if you look above us, it's 2 airports in Japan and 1 in China. So we're number 1 in North America and the United States. And we're very proud of that ranking that we have. Just below us is Dallas Love Field and Kansas City and other U.S. airports that we have beat out in that rating. And this is really looking at the facility that we provide and the functions and everything else that we provide to our traveling public. We are now proud of having 45 nonstop destinations to 41 cities. This is a very robust air service. If you looked at this just 10 years ago, we had 18 nonstop destinations. So we've more than doubled our nonstop destinations in the last 10 years. I always like to use this chart. You can see 10 years ago, the dip there at 18. What's important about this is you can see where ORF is highlighted there in yellow. And you can see there's 25 airports total on that ranking. We are the smallest airport on that list. So by all rights, we should be at the bottom. But instead, we have more nonstop destinations than Cleveland, more nonstop than Milwaukee, Memphis, Burbank, California, all airports that are much larger, metropolitan areas, much larger than us. So we punch above our weight here. And we're very proud of that. And we are continuing to work. We're trying to get to 50. That's our next goal. And then we'll go for more and more and more. But we are doing our work to make sure that we do that. This is our top 50 markets based on passenger travel. The left-hand side is the top 25. We have all but 2 of our markets nonstop. We don't have Seattle and we don't have San Antonio. I think we will fill those 2 gaps in here in the coming year. And then on the right-hand side is the 26 through 50. We're working to continue to fill those in. We'll never have that completely white in terms of take the green off because we can't get to Honolulu direct. And that's number 33. As much as I'd love to do that, it's just not going to be able to, that's probably not in the cards. But we'll skip through San Diego or Seattle to get to Honolulu. We have a very strong Honolulu market for our airport size. I just want to touch on international because that's, where's the international in Norfolk International Airport? We do accommodate international flights. We just had an Austrian Air last week that was diverted and we had to handle that. We do international cargo and we do have international charters. Plus we are one of the few airports on the East Coast that has a private international arrivals facility. So a private aircraft can fly into here, get cleared through customs, and then go on to their destination anywhere in the country. So we do have that. And so, but we are working on nonstop destinations. And again, a bit of an eye chart on that. Cancun and Montego Bay are our top 2 markets out of here. London is number 3. And then the other ones highlighted are all European markets. The reason I highlight those is we are not going to get American Delta United to fly nonstop to Europe out of here. It's just not going to happen. They're not going to overfly their hubs and their gateways. So what we are doing is we're taking the approach where we're going to international flag carriers, Aer Lingus out of Ireland, Condor and Lufthansa out of Germany, Air France and British Air, those, and say, we have the demand. Why won't you fly direct from here to your hub and connect us into that network? And I always like to use an example of one of my staff who just did a river cruise over in Europe. He had to fly 4 flights to get back from Prague to here. We don't want that. If we had a direct here to Dublin on Aer Lingus, it'd be one stop. And that's what we're shooting for. But it's going to take all of us working on that. And it's competitive. The table on the right-hand side shows the top 10 markets that are not served with transatlantic. Kansas City, Jacksonville, San Antonio, Columbus, Fort Lauderdale, and Charleston are our larger markets than us that don't have it. We are competing with them for these airlines and trying to do that. So we really need to work hard in terms of a community, and I'm going to touch on that. And I've just recently presented to the Hampton Roads Alliance Board. I think they are going to be critical in doing this because they can be the vehicle to help us as an airport and the region communicate and do the things that are necessary. But it's going to take the local governments, the businesses, the General Assembly, and I'm glad to see our assembly person here today, our senator, and the authority all working together to make this happen. This is not something the airport can do alone. It's just going to take a regional coalition to get it done. And I think we're real close. That's the good news. What it's going to take is incentives. It's going to take some monetary incentives on the region's part to support this. We have very strict limitations at the airport through FAA regulation as to what we can do. I can waive some fees and landing fees and rents. You throw a few marketing dollars, but it's not going to move the needle. It's really going to have to come from the communities. And here's a couple of recent examples where Aer Lingus just started about 2 weeks ago their service from Indianapolis. Indianapolis committed $19 million of minimum revenue guarantees. That's not a blank check, but that is we will back you up if you don't hit your minimum revenue guarantees so that you're not losing and while that service is getting initiated. We're going to have to do something similar to that as a region. There are different ways to bridge this gap. And this is a handful of those. A couple of them, the state casino revenues are being used in certain areas. What's the one that I always like to highlight is the second from the bottom, British Airways out of Cincinnati. The airport scraped together about $700,000 in marketing and landing fees and all that. Then Ohio came up with $10 million from Jobs Ohio. That's their VEDP equivalent, if you will, of economic support. Who knows where the airport in Cincinnati is? It's in Kentucky. It's not even in Ohio, yet Ohio is contributing $10 million. That shows the level of regionalism that they have pulled together. That's the level of regionalism we have to pull together to be successful at this. So. The state legislature definitely has a role in this, and I've talked with Senator Lucas a little bit about this, and glad to talk with any of the legislators. There is a governor's new air service incentive fund, but you can see the numbers I just showed. What's in the General Assembly budget of $825,000 for all airports, including Dulles and Reagan and Richmond and Roanoke is not going to go very far. And then the parameters, I can get $50,000 for daily service. Well, we're not going to start with daily service. We're going to start with once, twice a week service. And then I can only get 25,000. That's not going to move the needle. So this is where we really need the legislature in the next legislative session to work with us on trying to fix this, not just for Norfolk, but for all the airports, Norfolk, Richmond in particular, in getting this international service to the Commonwealth. Finally, I mentioned this, we can fill 2 flights a day or 2 flights a week to these top 7 destinations. Get them to Dublin, get them to London, get them to Frankfurt or wherever, and then distribute them from there for that one-stop service. One thing we have to underscore is please, please, please don't drive by us and drive to Dulles to get on the international flight because it's convenient, because we don't get that marked in our statistics. Dulles gets the credit for that. So those tables that I showed earlier, we're losing about 10% to drive to Dulles to get on international flights. So I just throw this out here. This is a little bit new from what I have been given in my State of the Airport because I think this is such an important topic right now and so timely. The airport is putting $25 million into a brand new state-of-the-art Customs and Border Patrol facility. We got some help from Senator Kane and Warner on some congressionally directed spending. We got some other federal funds, but the bulk of that money came out of the airport's operating budget. And so because Customs and Border Patrol doesn't pay for anything, they expect us as a community to pay for that. So we're doing that. So we are doing our part to get that facility up and operational by the end of this year, so that if we are lucky enough and we can pull things together here over the summer, we could, and we've been told by one particular airline that it is in the realm of possibility that they would start service next spring to one of the European hubs. If we can't get our act together, they said, well, probably 2 years from now. So this is crucial that we all come together at this time, and I'll be talking to more and more of you as time goes on. Finally, I'll go through a little bit on the passenger profile. I know I got to be rushed on time. We do a survey every year of our passengers. I always like to share some of this data. Purpose of travel, we're a 50-50 market, 50% leisure, 50% business. This is a great marketing tool for us. The airlines like that because they see stability in that. We're not dependent on one sector versus the other. This is a very good thing. Where do business passengers stay? We do that survey. Most are staying on the south side. For business, it's Norfolk, Virginia Beach, and Chesapeake. No probably big surprises there. And then it kind of goes down from there. On the leisure or pleasure side, again, it's the big three are Norfolk, Virginia Beach, and Chesapeake. But what you see climbing there is the Outer Banks. 10% of our leisure travel is to the Outer Banks. So that is a big change over the last several years. We are now being recognized as the gateway to the Outer Banks. So when I go talk to our congressional delegations up in Washington, which I do once a year, I include Senator Tillis from North Carolina and Congressman Murphy, because they represent some of our constituents their constituents are some of our passengers. So we want their support in getting federal funding going at Norfolk International Airport, not just at Charlotte and Raleigh and their airports. So it's very important there. Where do our people who live here, that use the airport live? They're living in Norfolk, Chesapeake, Virginia Beach again, no surprise there. And then you can see the rest of that. So about 60% of our traffic is local traffic. That's what this slide really says at the end. And then a question I always get is, what is the incidence of military? How much of our traffic is tied to the military? 25% of our traffic has some tie to the military, whether active duty, government related, which is the shipyards and other industries that support the DoD, and then you have civilian personnel and military dependents. So about 25%. No other airport in this country has that high of military incidents in their traffic. I can tell you that. Now, a little bit of view of the future. So this is our capital program that's underway. Our moving sidewalks, many of you who have been out to the airport see that phase one, the outbound from the terminal out to the baggage claim, has been put in, and we will be early June. If not, I'm pushing them by Memorial Day to get the inbound one open. It's installed. They're putting in the flooring at this point, and then they have to go through the testing and trials and all that. And we should have that online here very shortly. This was a great project. And probably the number one comment when I first got here 3 years ago is, why'd you take our moving sidewalks out, and what can we do to get them back? So we said if we could get some help from the feds, we would do it. They stepped up and we got that. Wayfinding, if you remember, or if you look at our wayfinding, it's very antiquated. It's back from the 60s and 70s. We're just now starting to introduce, if you've been there in the last week, you'll see new signage going up. Much easier for our passengers to be able to find where they're going in the terminal. We are well underway with our 3-gate expansion off of Concourse A. That's off the end there. You can see a construction. That's a little bit dated. We already have steel going up on that project now, and it will be open by December of this year. That'll give us 3 additional gates, pet relief area, new restrooms. If you've ever been on Concourse A, we only have 1 set of restrooms. And so that gets a challenge when we have to clean them, and where do you go? Or if there's a problem for maintenance, it's a major issue. So having a double set on A like we do on B will be very helpful. This will also give us flexibility for the new airlines that we've been seeing, like JetBlue, who just started. Right now, American is very interested, and Breeze is very interested in taking these new gates from us. And that's good because that means expanded service. I mentioned this one earlier, that if you've driven on our north side loop, you'd see the building going up, the steel's up, and they're starting to put the floor decking and roof decking in. This is the Customs and Border Patrol facility. It's going to lag about a month behind the other, even though they both broke ground at the same time, basically, because of the extensive systems that Customs needs to have installed and into that facility. It's a little bit different, a little more complicated on the system side than the construction's easy, but the systems are much more difficult. And then, of course, we're still working forward on the airport hotel. It's taking a little bit longer than I had hoped on design, but we'll get that moving here very shortly, and you'll see that coming up out of the ground, hopefully late this year, early next year. And then a new project that we just got some bill ATP funds for, about just under 15 million, to reorient our main intersection. If you come into the airport, we have that Y. People get confused by that. Which side do I go? And it's very confusing. And then especially since 50% of our inbound traffic is coming off of Robin Hood Road. And that is a very awkward left-hand turn or right-hand turn. It's just, we're bringing that all together as a lighted intersection, signalized. It's going to be a brand new, wide intersection. We're also going to realign Robin Hood Road to cut across the airfield now that we have permission to close our crosswind runway. So it's another subtle but very nice feature that will help a lot. And then I know, Bob, you're working at the other end of it to help us get that interchange at Robin Hood and Military Highway improved with 64 so that we have four-way, not just three-way traffic. That's a big challenge that we have. Another big project we have going on, $200 million consolidated rental car facility. Right now, they take up 2 decks in our parking garage. We're running out of parking, so I need to boot them out. So we're going to build them a new state-of-the-art facility. And this does a lot of things for us. The other thing that we have a problem with is they don't have any of their cleaning and fueling facilities on the airport. So they have to drive, every car that has to be serviced has to go 3 miles off down to Military Highway, serviced, and then brought back. That causes a huge delay in bringing cars back and forth, shuttling them back and forth. Also, it's putting unnecessary traffic out on our neighborhood streets. And so we're going to have that facility baked into the rental car facility so that they can do that and never leave the campus of the airport and never get out on the public streets with those cars. And then finally, the major project that we are advertising, literally advertising for construction manager at this point, is the Terminal Development Program Phase 1, which will address a number of issues: consolidated checked baggage inspection systems, consolidated checkpoint, new concession program to enhance our concessions so that we have more opportunities post-security for people to buy food, beverage, retail, and all of that. That's all going to get kicked off this summer and next summer. And this is the first view of what phase 1 is going to look like. It'll be in addition to going on to the front of the building that ultimately can be expanded, basically page towards us in this over time as we need to expand that facility for future growth and development. And I mentioned we just got permission to close our crosswind runway. It was non-functional, basically. It's 3,800 feet, cannot be used for commercial aviation. It poses a lot of challenges for safety for us. And so we went through the process of working with the FAA to be able to close it. Literally just 2 weeks ago, we received their approval to do that. So we're now in the process of doing that. What's important about that is it opens up land that the airport has been sitting on literally for decades in Norfolk and Virginia Beach that can now be redeveloped and put back into productive use. And this next couple of slides kind of highlight that. Burton Station is an area in Virginia Beach that's off the south end of that runway. That opens up about 55 acres for redevelopment. We're working very closely with Virginia Beach, as Mayor Dyer knows, with his teams there, and trying to find the right uses and the right plan so that we can put that back into productive use and generate revenue for the airport and generate taxes for the city. Likewise, on the north side, we have a couple of parcels, about 15 acres on Azalea Garden and Norview. And then with that road realignment, we're going to open up about 20 acres of additional land. So we'll have about 35-ish acres of redevelopment, greenfield site in the city of Norfolk. And I've been working with the mayor and his team as well about how we should redevelop that. And given the housing shortages and all these others, there's some great opportunities for us to be a part of this broader regional solutions, so that we're not just serving the transportation function, but we can also be part of either industrial development or residential and mixed use development as well, and be partners with the communities in that. And then finally, we have at Robin Hood Road, we have some property down there, about 12 acres, that we'll also be putting out for redevelopment later this summer as well. So I know I went through this very fast. I would be sensitive to time. There is a website, transformorf.com. We keep that updated with status updates of all these various projects. We will be putting out a new fly-through video of that'll be going on in the next week or so. So that if you're interested, you can download that and show that. And I would say, and I know Mayor Alexander, Mayor Dyer, and Mayor West have taken me up on the offers, and I've come to your city councils. I offer to any city council or county administration, if you want this roadshow, I'll be there. You just tell me when, and I'll be there, because we want to make sure that people know what we are doing at the airport and how we fit into the fabric of the region and the community. So I know I went through it very fast with you here today. I'm more than happy to bring the roadshow to anywhere and pretty much anyone who asks me. I think this is version 29 since I've been here, and over the last 3 years. So I've given this presentation a lot, and it's always every one of them is new. There's something new to add to what we have going on at the airport. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll take any questions if there are any. And then I'll get back to my civic graduation, which Matt Scalia and Pat Roberts, who are being substituted for, I couldn't get substituted.
Let's go. Want to open it up for anybody who has any questions and all that. And if you if you think about it, a lot of the people from Hampton, Newport News, and that sort of kind of go with the question: do I want to fight that tunnel to get to the airport, or do I want to just go up and hit Richmond? So in a couple of years, we'll have the tunnel taken care of and opened up, and so that's going to give you some more opportunity there for the peninsula side to make an easier track to get over to Norfolk and fly out of Norfolk instead of maybe going to Richmond. Any questions?
And we still have more nonstops than Richmond.
Yeah.
Yeah, just briefly, I know it's probably not, it's not within your area of expertise, but considering the issue of flight safety that we've seen in the news lately, I know the FAA and the federal government are involved in, that's definitely within their purview, but what's the relationship with you, the airport, and is there any issue there that we need to be thinking about?
I'm open and honest. We do have a very similar situation to what DCA has in terms of helicopter traffic off the end of our runway and approach, kind of that tunneling, if you will. We work with the Navy very well, both at Little Creek and at Norfolk Naval Station. We just recently tried to push that out a little bit more so that the aircraft have a higher flight over, but there is a corridor that they can fly through our airspace. And I am very active in that with the FAA and the air traffic control, as well as the Navy and the DOD on that. It's something that we watch day in and day out. I think we are in a better situation. We're not quite as congested, although we do have a very congested airspace for an airport in a region our size, given all of the military installations. But it's something that we have a very good cooperation with the DOD and the FAA, and we are safe. I'll end it with that. We are safe.
Yes, ma'am.
Question on when you talked about fees and different things that can be waived, what types of fees are you referencing that other airports have waived to be part of the solution with funding?
There are two revenue streams that come in from the airlines to us. One is landing fees, so that they pay us so much per 100,000 landed weight. And so that's one that we can waive for a period of for international, I can waive up to 2 years of landing fees. The other is their rent. So they rent space within the terminal. Their ticket counters, their hold rooms and, loading zones and all of that, and offices. I can waive that as well for 2 years as well. So that, that is, it can be a sizable number, but it's not going to be the number that's going to change and lure Aer Lingus or Condor or somebody else who's offering more. That's why the community really has to come together.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited about this presentation. And as I was going through, looking at what the passenger experience was, with the decommissioning of the runway, is there any effort to possibly beefing up general aviation with that particular piece of land, maybe with hangars, or maybe even offering more opportunities for flight schools in this area, instead of some of us, we have to travel all the way to Williamsburg or to Chesapeake, in order for us to get our training?
I will tell you, it's a delicate balance with us in particular, because we're a single runway airport. Even before the crosswind was closed, we're a single runway airport. So, and we've struggled for, as many of you know, probably the last 2 decades with the FAA trying to get a second runway. And they've said no, because we don't have a capacity need. And they base that on capacity, not redundancy. So the kind of analogy I use is San Diego has a one runway airport. Their runway is 200 feet longer than ours. That's the only difference. And they are 5 times the number of traffic planes taking off and landing. Until we reach that level, FAA is not going to let us have a second runway. Our focus has turned from we're focusing on the airfield to focusing on the terminal, because our terminal was built for 1 million passengers or less. We are now at 5 million passengers. We have a real shortfall in terms of that. As far as general aviation, yes, on the land towards Burton Station side, where on the airfield side, we are looking at more corporate hangars, because we have a waiting list for corporate hangar space. The small general aviation and flight schools, I'll be perfectly honest, we have some great regional facilities that are designated as our reliever, whether it be Hampton Roads Executive, Chesapeake, Newport News. That is a better function and role for them, and let us serve the commercial service. And so that we don't, the other analogy, for every general aviation aircraft, that single engine, the FAA has to put 6 miles of that commercial plane behind that general aviation plane. Now, the high performance jets, the corporates, and they can follow the same 2-mile separation. So it's a capacity issue for us. And so over time, general aviation single engine is going to be more difficult for us to accommodate at Norfolk International. But we have capacity in the region. And this is where I'm working with my regional counterparts to say, let's find our role and support each other in what our roles are. Yep.
I think it's very important, as you pointed out, for us to feel a part of this airport. And I think your presentation to our city council was really a good step towards that. So I would encourage you all to have Mark come in, because it does make you feel more a part of it. And we do have to do that in order to take it to the next level. So thank you for that.
And you get a free pair of socks when I come.
Get a free pair of socks.
That's right. I forgot about the socks that I won't wear.
None, oh, no, sorry.
No socks today. Any other questions?
I'll take care of you.
All right, Mark, thank you very much.
Thank
That
you.
was a great presentation.
And I apologize for running out. So you have my airport report as well, so you can skip me, but I got to get back to civic graduation.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next was going to agenda item number 7, which is the FY 2026 HRTPO budget. And we have no presentation on that. We're just.
Well, we will actually, Teelan Hansen, our chief financial officer, will be providing you a briefing on our proposed budget. This budget does come to you with a recommendation for approval by your Personnel and Budget Committee. So we will be asking for action today following Teelan's brief.
Thank you, Bob. Good morning, board members. I also do not have socks for everybody. I apologize for that, but we'll work on that for next year. I am happy to be here to present the fiscal year 2026 proposed budget for the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission and Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization. The slide that you see here shows the timeline of the approvals and the work that we have done to this point and what the budget covers. And of course, we're asking, as Bob mentioned, for approval on the budget today. The Personnel and Budget Committee has recommended, these are the members of your organizations that are on the Personnel and Budget Committee, and they have recommended approval or for us to bring this to you today for approval. In developing the budget, we kept in mind several priorities. We wanted to make sure that we were maintaining our staff and their professional development. We want to maintain our healthy cash reserves. We wanted to leverage opportunities for grant funding and sustain excellence in delivery of our services to the region, maintain our assets, and modernize our technology. And these are all addressed in the budget and as we put this budget together this year. Getting into the numbers, and I know those are very tiny, and I apologize. I will highlight a few of the numbers for you as we go through this slide. This is the total proposed budget laid next to the previous 5 years worth of budget. The blue lines are the total revenue and total expenditures, which sits just at $35.5 million for the total budget. The yellow line is our pass-through money, so we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but that is about $24.3 million of the budget is what we consider pass-through. So the numbers we're going to really kind of focus on is the one that's in pink, and the pink line there is our operating revenues. Our operating revenues are proposed at just a little under $11.1 million this year. And we'll get into some of the details of that in the next few slides. This chart shows those operating revenues historically. The orangish line or bars in the background show the total operating budget historically for the last 6 years. And then the lines show the various revenue sources that make up that operating budget. And so we'll start at the bottom and move our way up. The red line there at the bottom is our other revenue. This consists of our interest earnings as well as the support that we get from our affiliated organizations. The blue line right above that is our operating money that we get from the state. And those you can see have remained fairly flat over the last several years. The green line, I was going to say yellow, but it is green. The green line there in the middle is our local funding. This is the member contributions from our localities as well as the special assessments for the special programs that we run here at the PDC and TPO. And that is the green line there in the middle. And you can see also that growth has remained fairly flat over the last 6 years. The big line at the top with the most fluctuations is our federal grant funding. And as expected, that fluctuates from year to year, but it does take up a large percentage of our revenue. And as we talk about uncertainties with the federal budget coming up in October, these are the revenues that we're really watching. So our total federal revenue for this year is proposed at just a little over $6 million. We have two types of revenue. Our revenue can fall into two types here at our organizations. We have dedicated funding sources and for lack of a better term, undedicated funding sources. So the dedicated funding sources take up about 75% of our revenue. And as the name implies, dedicated funding sources means that the revenues that we get in for those particular programs are dedicated to those programs, and they cannot be spent on other to supplement other programs. And so examples of that here on the screen, of course, our transportation money is dedicated to specific transportation needs, water resources, some of our emergency management money, housing, and really any grants that we get are dedicated revenues. With 75% of those revenues being dedicated, of course, that leaves 25% of our revenues that are available to cover our core programs, match for those grants, and some special assignments. And so these are examples historically of what those special assignments would be. Our core programs are the same as they have been for a number of years. And then, of course, non-federal and state match. And I want to talk just a little bit about the non-federal and state match. We are very fortunate in that we have gotten a lot of federal grants that help support our operations here in our organizations. However, as those grants increase or as those grant opportunities come up, more and more of this undedicated or available revenue is required in order to leverage those grant funds in the form of match. So as those increase, the amount that we have left of this 25% continues to decrease to cover those core programs and special assignments because we're leveraging that match money in order to get the grant funds. A lot of you have probably seen similar charts to this before, and I realize this is very, very small. It's for visual. So on the left side is our member dues and our state allocation, and the total is in the blue, and that is the actual dollar amounts historically going back to 2001. On the right side, we have inflation adjusted those numbers. And so the reason I think it's important to show the inflation adjusted numbers next to the actual numbers is that you can see that the actual numbers in dollar amounts have increased over time. But when we adjust those for inflation, our buying power of those dollars is actually decreasing. This shows the inflation adjusted numbers a little bit differently, with the blue at the bottom being our state allocation and the kind of salmon color there being the member dues. The black line that goes across the middle is the 2026 value of those two revenue sources combined. And you can see that when we inflation adjust those numbers for the historical purposes, we are actually losing our buying power of those dollars as time goes on. We talked a little bit about pass-through. As I mentioned before, about $24.4 million of our budget here at the organization is pass-through money. This is money that we receive in that goes out pretty quickly to organizations or vendors in order to achieve the programs that are listed on the screen as examples. So this is money that we take in, and then we put it out into the communities to help further these types of programs. And so this does not support our operating revenues, but we pass this through. Looking at a very similar slide to what you saw for revenues, we're going to look at the expenditure side of the budget. And so what this does is you'll see in the bars the same level of operating expenditures in total, and then the lines are areas where that, or types of where that's spent. So at the bottom, we have the blue line, which is our standard and special contracts. These are legal contracts, our audit contracts, the same types of contracts that you all have in your organizations, with the green line being our general operational. So general operational will cover our travel, our training, our supplies, the things that we require to operate here at our organization. And so you can see that those are a relatively small percentage of our total budget. The light blue line in the middle is what we call deferreds and contingencies. And so that is money that we are planning on receiving in, but we don't quite know exactly where it's going to fall into the other categories as of yet. The vast majority of that is in the transportation funding at this point in time. And then the green line across the top is salaries. So what this really shows you is that a very large percentage of the budget here is in our personnel and our salaries. This is that same $11.1 million of expenditures, although this breakdown is by functional or performance area. So you can see that transportation takes up a little more than 50% of the total budget, with the other programs broken down in the other 50%. So some highlights of this operating budget. If we eliminate those deferreds and contingencies, then the operating budget right now is at $8.6 million. Excuse me, I tripped over my tongue there. The majority, of course, of that operating budget is related to personnel costs, over 80% related to personnel costs. We do have built into and proposed for this budget a 3% general wage increase for the staff. We have also included about $53,000 increase in our health insurance costs and for the premiums for the health insurance that we provide. We've included some new grants. We have been approved for 2 new water supply planning grants, so those are included in this budget. We received an increase to our federal P&L transportation planning funding, and that is built in. There's a little bit of a caveat with the federal transit funding. At the time of development of this budget, we didn't have the fiscal year 26 proposed numbers, so this budget is built on the fiscal year 2025 levels. We have received those fiscal year 26 numbers within the last week or so, and there is a slight increase for that funding. And we will, I'll talk about this in a little bit more detail in just a few moments, but we will be bringing an amendment back to the board later in the year to adjust for the things like this transit funding that we estimated to the best of our ability and that we know have changed. We have also included support for our partner organizations. These 3 organizations, the HRTPO, the Southside Network Authority, and the Hampton Roads Military and Federal Facilities Alliance. We provide staff support for those organizations as well as some general operating, and they reimburse us for those costs. And so this is also included on our revenue side and then built into our operational budget for the staff. I'm going to shift gears for a couple of slides and talk about where we are as an organization. And so this is where we project the fund balance to be. The top part of the slide shows our fiscal year 24 fund balance levels as audited, and then the fiscal year 25, what we're estimating with the year end coming up here shortly. You can see, and then the bottom shows our historical fund balance levels with the red bars being the total fund balance. Including all the categories, and then that blue line that kind of cuts across the middle or the bottom portion there is our available fund balance or unassigned fund balance. So that's what we have available to spend in an emergency. That's what we have available to deal with cash flow when we're waiting for reimbursement from federal grants. So we're anticipating our total fund balance to go up just a little bit in fiscal year 2025 as we close out the year. However, the available fund balance we're anticipating to drop just slightly. So you can see there with the blue line across the middle that available resources, lack of a better term, our rainy day fund or our reserves kind of drops a little bit over time. We have several categories of reserves. So like your organizations, we have to have certain levels of cash in order to deal with our capital needs and our technology needs. And so we have some reserves built into our fund balances in order to deal with those needs. And so these are the audited fiscal year 2024 levels of those reserves that we have in place to address our capital needs with our building as well as modernize our technology. As I wrap this up, I want to talk a little bit about some of the future challenges or that we're seeing that are coming for our organization. I talked a little bit about those dedicated funding sources versus the undedicated or the available funding sources. So we're facing a lack of flexible funding streams where we can kind of pivot with some of those revenues to address operating needs. Some of our revenue is rather slow or stagnant in its growth. Certainly, we are all feeling the unpredictability of the federal funding at this point in time. And as I mentioned, we know that there are some things that are making its way through the federal budget that will be approved hopefully before October. Later this year, when we get a handle on what those are and how those affect our programs and what we've planned for, we will certainly be coming back with some probable budget amendments as those things get a little more clear. We want to make sure that our staff salaries are adequate and that we are recruiting good staff and retaining them. Our regional buildings and facilities, our technology, I mentioned match for our grants and the 25% that we have for our core programs and how much of that goes towards match for our grants. And as our grants increase, which is a good thing, that need for the funding in order to match continues to increase. We are bumping right up on 50 employees. And there are some things that change once you become an employer with 50 or more employees. So there's some additional requests and services that we would have to provide once we reach that 50. And then, of course, inflation. With that, I am happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman, that any of the board members have. We do ask that at the conclusion of your discussion that we recommend that you approve the budget for fiscal year 2026. Thank you.
Okay, any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much for the presentation. And I really appreciate the clarity that you have around the lack of flexibility with the funding streams. I do sit on the emergency committee that is viewing the impact of federal workforce and funding reductions. And so as we make our way across the Commonwealth, we will be in Hampton Roads in June, approximately on June 20th at Norfolk State University. So I wanted to get clarity on the 24 million that's pass-through revenue, and then just how much of that depends on the federal flow, and is there any type of federal funding risk exposure analysis that you could pass on to the committee or would possibly want to present to the emergency committee? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So of the pass through, a lot of these, the Virginia Telecommunications Initiative, that is federal funding. That is kind of wrapping up and coming to a close. That is the money that we received in order to get broadband into the rural areas that we are working through. And we bring that money in and pass it along to the contractor who's doing that work. Certainly the metropolitan or some of the emergency management, that is significantly at risk. That is FEMA money that comes through Homeland Security. And we know that has some serious risks with it. And we're watching that very, very closely. A lot of our resiliency and water resources programs, the same. Bob's nodding, so I'm not getting too far afield here. But a lot of those resiliency and water resources programs are also at risk at a federal level.
And Delegate, thank you very much for that question. So I think Teelan's done a great job, high level, of talking about some of our areas that we're going to be monitoring. The Virginia Coastal Zone Management Program, which is critical, obviously, in the coastal region, is another one that we're watching very closely. We would very much be interested in participating in that June 20th session. Thank you very much. The other thing, Delegate, I wanted to mention, there is a group of us as regional organizations that have been convening about once a week for some time now. And what we are trying to do is assess this risk of federal funding. And I think if a couple of us could be on that agenda to present, that you could hear from a couple different organizations and what that risk vulnerability might be, and we would be happy to do that.
Very good. So we will be addressing a number of things, particularly with our militaries and veterans. We'll also be addressing transportation infrastructure as well as healthcare, and then K through 12. So I think that's kind of our charge. And we do have an expansive meeting where we do want to hear from a number of voices across Hampton Roads, including some of the agencies that are sitting at this table. It would be great to alert Chair Bulova of your wanting to be on the agenda.
Thank you. Any other questions? I know one comment or one thing I've looked at on page 7, and in 2021, the amount the members were given and the amount they're given in 2026, that's $1 million plus in that 25-year period. And if you look at the state, what they're allocating and what they're giving now is dropped, not quite in half, but significant. just like our schools and everything else. So, you know, when you get a chance to let the state know, you know, that, hey, we're carrying more and more burden locally. And, you know, but so much burden, just like the state, there's so much burden we can all carry. Well, you can see right here, that's a lot of burden extra we're carrying with all the other items that we have in our cities and counties. And, so just something to think about as we move through that. So any other questions we have? And all right, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we would ask for a motion in a second, in a vote to approve our budget.
Motion to approve, Bobby Dyer.
Rick West, second.
Motion second, Paul Kaplan.
First and a second, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed, nay? Any abstentions? Guys, carry.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, Hampton Roads Rail Crossing.
Yes, we're going to have Keith Nichols, who is at the podium. Thank you.
You know we're tight on time.
Yes. Need every second I can get on this one. Great. Good morning, everybody. Today I'll be making a presentation on the ongoing Hampton Roads Rail Crossing study that we're doing here at the HRTPO. So your Freight Transportation Advisory Committee recommended to us a couple years ago that we undertake the study, and there was a couple reasons that they wanted us to look at these rail crossings in our study. One is obviously because of the importance of freight in our region. As you know, we're home to the third largest container port on the East Coast, so we have a lot of freight going in and out of our region. And that leads to a lot of intermodal conflicts. So particularly when you think about rail crossings, where rail going in and out of the port, sorry, didn't realize that went out. Where you have a lot of freight going in and out of our port, conflicting with people just traveling across the region on our roadways. So that was one reason we looked at it. Another reason we want to look at is there's some new federal funding sources and state ones as well that'll help fund these improvements. So the purpose ultimately of the study is to, one, create an inventory of these regional crossings in our region, and then also to create a way we could prioritize these crossings so to help us better position ourselves for some of these new federal and state funding sources that we can get for these crossings. So these are the sections of our study. So far, we've completed the ones in green, and for the sake of time today, I'll mostly stick to what you see there in red in terms of the regional summaries and the prioritization. That being said, I do want to address a couple things that we're showing on here. One is the railroad crossing inventory. So when we started the study, we didn't quite realize what we were getting ourselves into in terms of the amount of work this would take. A lot of our federal sources, or a lot of our data sources, we can ask, VDOT or other agencies and get some of that data and start our analysis. Well, when we looked for the railroad crossing study, in terms of this inventory, there was nothing we had to start with, really. FRA had a little bit of information, but nothing significant that we could just roll with. So we had to take that and tie it with a lot of other data sources from VDOT. Some of it we had to look up ourselves, things like that. So that was quite time consuming, but ultimately we were able to create an inventory of all these railroad crossings in our region. Another bullet I want to talk about real briefly there is where it says identify areas isolated by rail crossings. And this is something that came up to us after we had started work on this, and it kind of came from the situation we saw in East Palestine, Ohio, with the derailment we saw there. But we did hear from a couple city, I think it was from city manager levels, that there are some issues in our region in terms of some neighborhoods, some commercial areas that are isolated by rail crossings. So there's only one way in and one way out of that particular neighborhood or maybe business or things like that. And so even if it's not a situation like East Palestine where you have a derailment, but even if it's a slow or a stopped train, these neighborhoods can be cut off for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes at a time. That cuts off not only getting in and out of the neighborhood, but when you think of emergency response or things like that, it's definitely critical to look at that. So we agreed as part of this study that we would also create an inventory of these areas and some of the issues that are suffered by these populations when these occur. But like I said, mostly I wanted to discuss what's in red here today in terms of regional summaries and our prioritization. So when you look at the number of railroad crossings in our region, in total, we have 619 in our region. When I started this study, I wouldn't have had a guess as to what the number was. I guess that's a little higher maybe than I would have thought. But if you look at every crossing in our region, it comes to 619. So then we wanted to take that and then split it up between those that are currently at grade. So there's a conflict when a train passes through and vehicles can't pass, versus those where there's already an overpass or underpass there. And so it's about 3/4 of the crossings in our region are currently at grade, with the other 146 already having a structure in place to separate the traffic. And then with that, we wanted to split it a little further to delineate between which one of those are publicly owned and maintained versus ones that are private. So the private ones may just provide access to a business or a residence or things like that, versus public owned and maintained roadways. So 307 total crossings in our region are both public and at grade. So it's roughly about half of the total number of crossings you see in our region. Everything I'm showing you from here forward in terms of when we're talking about prioritization, it's that 307 public and at-grade crossings that we drilled into to determine which of those we should prioritize when we start looking for improvements. We also broke it down by locality, just to see where these crossings are in our region. So if you look at total crossings, that also includes overpasses, underpasses, or at grade. City of Chesapeake has the most in our region at 122. It's barely above the city of Norfolk at 118. Suffolk is third at 94. But the ones in red, that's those public at grade that we're looking at, as I said, when we're talking about prioritization. Norfolk is actually quite a bit ahead of all the other localities at 73 public at grade crossings. Chesapeake is second at 55, and then third was Suffolk at 48. All the other localities are quite a bit below that. So that's really where those crossings are located, like I said, when we started looking at prioritization. So in order to prioritize these crossings, we had to come up with a methodology. We looked at some research nationwide. We really didn't see anything on a regional level. We did see some statewide prioritization that areas do, particularly in the Midwest, where there's a lot of rail crossings in those areas. But for the most part, they wouldn't really fit a region like ours. So we were kind of starting from scratch on that. So we worked through various committees of the TPO board, including the FTAC, the Transportation Technical Advisory Committee. We also worked with the Community Advisory Committee. And we did this in an iterative process to figure out what their thoughts are, go back to the drawing board, come up with draft methodology, see what they think, go back and forth, like I said, until we got agreement from those three committees in terms of what they thought made the most sense in terms of the data we had available, what would make the most sense in terms of weighting these different data sources in terms of making a prioritization methodology. So we break them down roughly into 6 categories. The first one you see there is traffic volume. So that's the number of vehicles that cross each of these crossings in a given day, both currently, and then we also looked at future volumes for the year 2045. And then also looked at truck volumes because of the importance of freight movement in our region. Safety ended up being 20 points. So that's the number of crashes, number of injuries, number of fatalities that occur in our region. We also filed emergency response under this category. So how close is the crossing to fire stations, rescue squads, hospitals, just the other emergency centers, things like that. Those ones got priority if they were more heavily used, we believed, by these emergency responders. Roadway characteristics is 15 points. So what is the functional class of the roadway, for example? Military importance we filed under this. How important is the roadway to the military's purposes? And then also we looked at what is the proximity to the nearest grade separated crossing. So is it a 1/10 of a mile detour or is it 10 miles, for example? And we wanted to prioritize obviously the ones that you have to go a much further distance to get to a grade separated crossing of that area. We looked at train volumes, both existing, and then we also estimated future train volumes, largely based on some of the growth estimates that we're seeing from the port and their master plan, and also some of their thoughts in terms of how would they expect freight to be some more shift from transferring by truck versus train. So we estimated those future train volumes based on that. Estimated delay. This is the highest factor, but it's also the one we struggled with the most because there is no set number that says, this crossing, suffers this much delay in a day because of the number of trains and number of people that uses it. So we did have to kind of estimate it based on blockage time. So how long is the crossing blocked in any given day? And then what are some of the volumes that used it? And then came up with those factors, both existing, and we did estimate future delays as well for this prioritization. Final factor we did is area factor. So the thing I mentioned earlier in terms of the isolated neighborhoods, that factors into there, in transportation vulnerable communities from our LRTPO. So factors into that as well. So like I said, this was an iterative process, feedback from each of these committees before we finally got some consensus from all of them that this was a good methodology to use moving forward. So with that, we scored all of those 307 public at-grade crossings, and no surprise, I think, to anybody that's familiar with this, number one by far was the rail crossing that goes across Hampton and Terminal Boulevard entering Norfolk International Terminals. It scored 86 points out of 100. High volumes, high delays, high number of trains going in and out, things like that. So I can't say I was particularly surprised that ranked #1 on our list. #2, also in the city of Norfolk, and it's along the same line at Ward's Corner. It's the rail crossing for Granby Street. Once again, accessing Norfolk International Terminals. #3 was also in Norfolk, but it's a different rail line, and this is Church Street near 20th that goes towards Lambert's Point. Once again, high volumes on Church Street and a high number of trains going in and out of the Landsbert Point area on the Norfolk Southern line there. So we prepared a top 25 prioritized crossing list. I'll zoom in on the urban area here in a little bit, but I wanted to talk about the ones that are in the more rural areas first. If you look at the western side, in the Isle of Wight and in the Suffolk area, there are 3 crossings that showed up in our top 25. So the Route 258 crossing in Windsor made the top 25 list, and then 2 in downtown Suffolk along Washington Street and in that general downtown Suffolk area. And I know the city of Suffolk has applied for federal dollars to help come up with a planning study to look at those. So it was good to see that those did make, one made the top 10, I believe, and then the other one was in the top 25. Other thing I want to mention is there's only one on the peninsula, and that's number 25, and that's Airport Road in the James City County, York County area. The major reason that so few crossings in the peninsula made the list is because many are already grade separated on that CSX line. There are actually very few at grade crossings along that CSX line on the peninsula. If they are at grade, they're generally roads that are less traveled by vehicular volumes. So once again, not surprising when you dig at the data that most of the crossings you see are on the south side, but we did have that one up at the James City County, York County area on Airport Road. However, as I said, most of them are kind of in the urbanized area on the south side. The top 5, I believe, were in the city of Norfolk, and 9 of the top 25, I believe. But there's also quite a few in Chesapeake, for example. So if you look at Portlock Road, for example, that makes it, and the city has been studying that and applying for federal funding for that crossing for multiple rounds and years. But that one did make our top 10 list. If you look at the city of Portsmouth, there's a few along the Norfolk and Portsmouth Beltline as well. The George Washington Highway crossing made our top 10 list as well as part of that. But you can see some of these crossings here that made our top 25 list. So that's where we're at in the study now. When we're talking about moving forward, we're going to take those top 25 locations that I just showed you, and we're going to go into much further detail. We want to look at what might be some candidate improvements that can be conducted at those locations. Some locations, it might make sense to have a grade separated crossing, while other ones, maybe if they're in a very urbanized area, wouldn't make as much sense, and it might make more sense for either a railroad realignment or maybe some sort of technology solution to help with those locations. So we'll take all 25 of those locations and come up with a candidate list of projects that we can look at for those. We will be discussing these locations further with localities and the railroads moving forward. I know we've had many discussions already with the city of Norfolk showing our data and talking about these locations, but each of the localities you see on there, we will have discussions with the localities. And like I said, as we get these candidate project ideas, we'll be sharing them with the railroads as well to get their thoughts and see what their feedback is on that. We'll also inventory the data that's needed for the state and federal grant programs for these 25 locations. So hopefully if we do submit for any of those, it can almost be a plug and play where you take the info from our study and submit it for those grants. And then ultimately, we want to complete all this here over the next roughly 6 to 9 months. I know some of the coordination might take a little longer, but at least we would like to get a draft study out there kind of in the fall to winter timeframe to start reviewing and getting our feedback before we finalize that. So that's where we're at right now with the study, and I'd be happy to take any questions you might have on it.
Question for Keith? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Ella Ward, Chesapeake. Is it possible to get the data that you just presented for distribution or whatever to city council members? Because I guess like everyone else, a lot of these areas we have been working on for years trying to get some help, whether it's Woodlake Road. Could we get details of what he just presented because it's not in our book?
Yes, and we've prepared one-pagers moving forward that shows some of that data for each of those 25 crossings. I can share that with you, and then if you'd rather have more detailed data, I can do that as well. But the one-pager might have what you're looking for each of those crossings.
Thank you. A little more detail, I think, in order to discuss it adequately. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Any others? I have a few comments. I know that, sometimes in the rural areas and all, I know we've got this already in place, but I'd like to see instead of 20 points for safety, maybe push that up and have a higher rating on, because safety, I think, is our biggest thing as far as any of our jurisdictions. And I know the, the south side's got more crossings and that sort of thing. And we just lost one of our residents, young lady with a couple of children and a husband and all that in a traffic accident with a train. And that no bars or anything came down because it's a rural area and it's limited access for people and that sort of thing in there. But just want to let everybody know too that, anytime you're crossing tracks, please take your time and give it a minute. It's no rush. And this was a shame that the young lady was taken from us at such an early age with children. And that's why she was going to the bus stop to pick up her kids when she went across the tracks, and at the same time the train was coming. So it was a terrible loss for us, and just want to make sure that everybody's safe out there when they're crossing the tracks. But I think it's a good project and something we can hopefully work. I know it's been years trying to get all these crossings and get a safer thing in place, and we've got to kind of work together. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, question? Yes, ma'am.
So I just wanted to piggyback off of public safety, and I'm not sure if my question goes outside the realms of this crossing study, but I know there has been a number of persons, particularly in Norfolk, who's talking about spent flares at certain crossings and the environmental impact of those flares, especially when, with weather changes and, fire risk, when the flares are discarded on public use land and, at right of way. So just wanted to lift that up. If that's a part of this traffic study or if it's beyond this rail crossing study.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Bob, we're at the next one. Item number 9.
Very good. Mr. Chairman, we'll go on to our partner reports. The chair has asked me to call on our partners today. If you have something to share, we asked for short briefings. If you have nothing, that's okay. We'll just keep moving on. We'll start with our Commonwealth Transportation Board member, Mr. Coleman. Anything to report today, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have a regular meeting scheduled for next week, but I do want to report on Smart Scale in this round 6 that we just completed and we'll be voting on in June. 11 of 31 of the applications submitted were recommended for funding. That's something to celebrate. That's nearly 33%, a third. We're #1 district in the state. It's typically around 15% approval. So kudos to all the various localities that submitted applications. And we appreciate it for a number of reasons, because it takes a lot of time to go over these applications. It costs you money to submit them, but the local VDOT staff has to monitor them. Richmond gets involved. So it's something to celebrate, but we also, with that, 11 of the 6 of the 11 localities actually had approval of applications. So that's another statistic to celebrate. But to get the applications approved is the first step. I would encourage each of the localities to move them along. We still have projects that were in round number 2, 10 years ago, that are sitting on the sidelines and the money hasn't been put to use. That's a little bit troubling for a number of reasons. Again, the local district offices have to manage these sitting on the books, but also inflation. And people are coming back to us occasionally and asking for additional funds to make up the inflationary as a result of delays in starting the project. And they aren't meeting very welcoming arms from the CTP to approve those kind of inflationary increases. So get to work. The commissioner and VDOT in Richmond, the localities are trying to work to move these projects forward. And we'd ask for y'all's cooperation in that regard. So that's the end of my report. But again, congratulations, number one by far.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Mr. Hall from VDOT, I believe you have an update on a couple of exciting projects for us.
Yeah, thank you. So I would just like to underscore Mr. Coleman's comments. Appreciate all the hard work by our localities with the smart scale applications. We continue to be very successful here in the region and continue to work with the localities on inflationary impacts. We know that is an item that everybody struggles with. So we're doing our best to help and, as he said, keep these projects moving. The first of the items that I wanted to provide a quick update on was our GAP projects. As everybody knows, that's a key project for the region. This is the 29 miles that separates us from Bottoms Bridge that still remains to be widened. All three of those projects are now under contract, which is great. With basically all three of them will be completed by the summer of 29. Two of the three segments will be completed in calendar year 27. So we're excited about seeing the project progress for all three of those. As you drive the corridor, you can see a lot of the median clearing going on. All of the widening will be to the inside within VDOT right away, so that's helpful. But you know, there'll be, as usual in these types of projects, which we're pretty familiar with from our peninsula projects, you know, we'll be shifting traffic to the outside, doing all that work on the inside median to prepare for the widening, and then shifting traffic back to the inside as we finish up the outside of the project. So again, all the key point here is all projects are under a contract and underway, actually under construction. And we anticipate having that complete piece of I-64 widened to 3 lanes in each direction by the summer of 29. For our Denby interchange project, this is a 2-phase project. The first phase, which will address all of the westbound on and off movement. So that'll provide access from the interstate to Denby Boulevard and off of Denby Boulevard to the interstate in the westbound direction on the peninsula there on I-64. This project, we just actually released the request for proposal. So we're in procurement on that project right now. We anticipate having that project awarded later on this year in October. So it'll be underway. That's a design build project. So you'll see about, probably 4 to 5 months of design work until we start doing some preliminary construction work out there. But again, this project is scheduled to be completed by the spring of 29. And we're excited about that, obviously. Needed for a long time to alleviate some of the pressures on the Jefferson interchange, and then also will help with operational efficiency on the Port Eustis Boulevard interchange. And then the second phase of that project, which will address the eastbound egress and ingress movements at that location, will be a design bid build project. We went to this approach based on a lot of the work we're going to have to do on this side with the railroad coordination in our design process. That project is scheduled to go to advertisement in fiscal year 2030 to be completed in 2034. So really, we looked at prioritizing the eastbound or the westbound direction first. That is the greatest operational issue that we have up there at that interchange. So hence why we separated those two out into phases, and then also funding availability. HRTPO is actually funding all of phase 2 on that project. So again, a lot of work going on. Very excited about those 2 projects and the progress we're making. One other note that I have is we are past the 50% mark, about 54% on our second tunnel in mining operations. So that's exciting as well. And then as you see on the peninsula, we started the first of 2 shifts onto our our new widened westbound bridge there in Hampton. We'll have the second part of that traffic shift, which will shift all the eastbound traffic the first part of June, and then we'll start the demolition of the old eastbound bridge. So again, making great progress. We appreciate everybody's patience. And there's a lot of work, about $5.5 billion worth of work going on just on the interstate in this region. And we're doing our best to make sure that we're keeping folks moving.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, with, just want to say, it's amazing coming together what everyone in this room and have been before us and who will go after us, how much we've been able to accomplish in transportation. It is, in my lifetime, I've never seen it. So y'all all deserve a well round of applause for all your hard work and dedication and time, not only in your communities, but on your regionalism. And that's one thing we talked about it. I said it years ago about the congestion at Jefferson. And I said, when we get the interstate phase 1, 2, and 3 up to that point, the congestion is gonna be in James City County, is just gonna move up the road. And we continued to push and get that taken care of through, not only this organization, but through Richmond as well, to try to push that all the way up, past Bonner's Bridge. And, so we're in the process, we're very close to completing that. And hats off to each and every one of your members and everybody from VDOT and the CTB and all y'all's hard work and everything. Thank you very much for those efforts. And it's because of y'all is the reason this is getting done. So thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Moving on to DRPT, Zach Trogdon. No report. From there, we will, I do not believe anybody's here from the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority. Barb Nelson, Virginia Port Authority. Thanks, Barb. Our transit entities, HRT and WADA.
I'll be very quick. Virginia Beach Wave Trolley season is underway. We are utilizing the summer season to introduce Go Mobile, which is our new mobile ticketing system. Trolley passengers will be able to take advantage of a new app to purchase their tickets. Building on last year's ridership growth, HRT is again implementing a robust marketing and communications plan. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, William. WADA, anything? Thank you. I do not believe we have anybody from our freight committee nor our community committee today. On to our military liaisons. Sir, anything to report? Thank you. Mr. Chairman, you've heard from your airport today.
Yep.
I do not believe the Peninsula Airport is, yes, I'm sorry, sir. Absolutely. Hello.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you. So Newport News Airport does have 2 projects coming up. Our taxiway Delta rehabilitation and our general aviation ramp rehabilitation. Those are expected to start early around September, October. That's all.
Fantastic. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I believe that concludes our partner reports.
Okay. Next, number 19, you have your 3-month tentative schedule. Number 20 is minutes from the advisory committee. 21 is for your informational, and then 22 is old business, new business. And is there any old business or new business anyone wants to bring up at this time?
Mr. Chairman, I just make a note that we have lunch available over in the 757 room for everyone. Hope that you'll be able to stay for our Hampton Roads Planning District Commission meeting, which will start in this room at 12:30. And I see Mr. Rubin out of my peripheral vision, who has the forward thinking newsletter that actually is a feature on this room and all of you coming together at this table. So if you have, and he'll have some extras for you out in the lobby.
And then Kelly's going to send the information. I don't think we brought that up to him, but you want to bring that up?
Sure. So you'll be receiving an email from Ms. Kelly Arledge, probably in the next week or so. It's evaluation time, so you'll receive a request for the executive director's evaluation. So keep a lookout for that email from Ms. Arledge.
All right. Any other questions? All right, we're adjourned.